Welcome to today's Religion Media Centre briefing, and today we're discussing a campaign to recruit more teachers of religious education in England and Wales. The subject is compulsory in schools, and more students are taking GCSE in the subject, but applications to teach it have plummeted by a third this year. And joining us on the call, we have Dr. Catherine Wright, the Chief Executive of Culham St Gabriel's Trust, Dr. Tim Hutchings, Assistant Professor in Religious Ethics at the University of Nottingham, Heather Marshall, Associate Tutor in Religious Education at Edgehill University, Liverpool, and we hope later on Louisa James Smith, an RE teacher and presenter of the RE podcast. So Catherine, can I start with you? Could you give us some facts about the shortage of RE teachers? How many do we need and how many do we have? What is the shortfall?
Okay, so the shortfall is quite significant. As you mentioned, Ruth, so far this year, recruitment is down by almost a third on previous years. But the issue is that when we take into account the last 9 of 10 years, where recruitment has not met its target. So there are significant shortfalls in the workforce. And we know that over 100 different jobs for RE were being advertised, I think, just in the London area recently. And we know that we've got, less than, 450 people coming through who are going to be able to fill these places. And that's 100 people just for one week. So this is it's a real problem. I think one of the other things to point out is that even just thinking more widely about the workforce in terms of RE, 25% of RE lessons are taught by teachers with no post-A-level qualification. 51% of teachers of RE mainly teach in other subjects. That's now, let alone trying to recruit more people in. We know that the numbers of graduates for theology and religious studies courses in 2020-21 was approximately 1,300, but only about 10% of those will potentially go on and enrol in initial teacher training. So since 2011, sorry, I don't want to be too depressing, but since 2011, there's been a fall of about 10.9% in the number of people training to teach the subject. But can I give you a positive to finish on? The positive is that more young people are wanting to do religious studies at GCSE. I think you did a little session about this before, Ruth. A survey we commissioned towards the end of last year, looking at sort of parental public opinion about the subject, is actually really positive. So there's some really positive things there more generally, but it's the teacher issue that's the problem.
What accounts for it? As graduates leave university and choose their careers, why aren't they choosing to teach RE?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, Ruth. And I think it's multifaceted. I think there are some general issues that we've got. So workload, pay not keeping pace with inflation, a third of the profession are leaving the profession quite early on, sort of within 5 years. We also have a bit of a crisis in sort of what we might call middle leadership, with large numbers, particularly women, leaving sort of between the ages of 30 to 39, for example, because sort of maybe lack of opportunities of flexible working and so on around that time. But also with RE specifically, we don't have a bursary currently for the subject, whereas some other subjects do. When you look at some of the statistics, not all, but for some of the other subjects that have a bursary, they are recruiting generally a bit better. That isn't the case across the board. Physics, I know, is still a particular challenge, but some of the other subjects like geography, chemistry, I think, for example, are recruiting better. So I think that's a particular issue for RE. And also, I think there are some myths out there that you need to have a theology degree or a religious studies degree to become an RE teacher. And that isn't the case. So I'm sure we'll talk about the campaign a bit more, but one of the things we want to try and do is a bit of myth busting. So I think there's some other challenges that are facing us, particularly in terms of RE recruitment, but there are clearly wider issues out there.
Can I just go to you, Heather, now? Heather, you're the Associate Tutor in RE at Edge Hill University, Liverpool. What kind of what are the young teachers like who want to teach RE? Why are they doing it? Why are they coming to you? Is there one answer to that?
Yeah, I mean, the cohort that I've got this year are incredibly passionate, are enthusiastic. Um, but one of the biggest things that I find inspires applications and inspires people to come into the profession is having an inspiring teacher themselves. And that comes up time and time again in interview. Why do you want to be a teacher? Well, I had a fabulous RE teacher that really brought the subject alive for me. So I want to do that for the next generation. And that's like incredibly important to them that RE is kind of upheld and stay significant within schools. They are very passionate, but they also kind of know that they almost have to fight for their subject as well. I find that they're kind of very willing to kind of take on some of the fight for the place of RE within schools as well.
Could you tell me a little bit more about that then, Heather, the place
Mhm.
of RE in schools? Is one of the reasons that it's not such an attractive subject that it is low down in
Mm,
priorities
mm.
in schools when it comes to finding its place within the
Yeah.
curriculum at all sometimes?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's an interesting one, and I think there's much like Catherine was saying, like multifaceted reasons for a lot of these things. I think there's multifaceted reasons why RE sometimes does have to fight for prominence and does have to fight for its position. Um, I think there's a historical kind of misconception about RE and what RE is there for, and what's the purpose of RE. So some people go back to kind of the days of religious instruction and think it's about making our young people religious or has a Christian ethos. And so I think although, as Catherine's rightly said, young people are starting to value it. That change has become, is a bit slower within the school system itself. Um, because it's often just one lesson a week as well, just due to staffing and budgets and that kind of stuff. So it can be quite high turnover for staff in pupil numbers as well. And also, it's not included as part of kind of an EBAC subject, so it doesn't count towards some of the reporting of gradings for schools at GCSE. And so schools will sometimes put their efforts elsewhere in this kind of metric-driven society that we kind of live in.
Can you just, in a nutshell, tell us what the law is regarding RE in schools? I know
Mm,
we danced around it in your last answer, but just to be clear, is
yeah,
it compulsory? At
yeah.
what ages and to what extent?
It's compulsory. It has to be a compulsory part of the curriculum for every pupil from early years up until they finish school, kind of post 16. So as long as a child is um, in a school setting, they should be studying RE, and that includes it should include kind of further education settings as well, kind of colleges beyond schools as well. Although that's patchy. And so all pupils are entitled to it. I think it works out roughly around an hour a week of RE. That's the stipulation. There's kind of all sorts of kind of percentages, I assume.
What is the impact on departments such as your own
Mm,
that teach the teachers of RE
mm,
with fewer applicants coming forward? So we've heard the statistic, there are a third fewer applications
mm.
this year. Does that put your own and other parallel departments at risk?
Yeah, it does. It does. And universities are not going to be keen to continue to support courses that are not seen as financially viable. And although that sounds very cynical, that's the way that universities are run. And so it's very important that we keep our numbers kind of buoyant and we grow as a course. I know that there's places within the UK where there's very little opportunity to train to be an RE teacher because the courses have been cut as well. Um, because they're just not seen as viable.
Do you know how many colleges there are that teach teachers of RE?
I think there are so many different providers now. It's in the hundreds of different providers. So obviously you have university providers, but you've got school-centred initial teacher training as well, and so on. So there are a vast number of providers, but a number of those are maybe offering one or two places.
Tim, just turning to you. So you're at the University of Nottingham. I'm just wondering what impact the lack of specialist teachers in RE has for departments such as yours when you have young people aged 18 turning up to do a course in theology or religious studies. Do you find that there is the amount of information that you'd be looking for to build on when you find these graduates first in your classes in September?
Theology and religious studies has always been a university subject that you can take from any kind of background. We welcome students from a really wide range of A-level backgrounds. What's interesting, I think, is that the popularity of RE and subject like religious studies and related subjects at A-level over the last 20 years has really gone up very considerably. And we haven't seen a corresponding increase in the number of people doing it at university. So what you might expect is that people study RE at A-level and they have a fantastic teacher and they learn it's a wonderful subject, and that means more of them go on to university, which hasn't happened yet. That's certainly something I'd like to encourage more of in the future. And at the same time, as we've already mentioned, there are people doing theology and religious studies degrees all around the country. You would think they would graduate and think, this is the most interesting subject in the world. I'd love to go back into school and help people learn more about it. But actually, very few of them do. Only about 10% of people with theology and religious studies degrees go back to teach RE in schools. So there's a very odd pipeline between the different levels of the subject. The more could be done here to support progression, I think.
We've heard that the number of people applying to be a teacher has dropped by a third. What are the conversations you have with your students as they prepare to leave and choose careers? Can you shed any light on why they're not going into teaching as a profession?
Well, I think, and this is something that RE teachers will be emphasising as well. This is a subject that leads into a really wide range of careers. Through doing RE, you learn about, or religious studies at the university. We spend lots of time talking about ethics and what would make society a better place and what is a just world, what kind of a world do you want to live in. So, of course, lots of people go on into careers in that area. They might work on policy or international relations or social work or something. You spend a lot of time analysing evidence, and we tell students, look, you've figured out how to make sense of a really questionable eyewitness account from 2,000 years ago that sounds very unlikely, and you have managed to figure out which bits of evidence are reliable here and how to turn that into a persuasive argument. There are lots of careers you could go into for analysing evidence of different sorts, or storytelling professions, like journalism or screenwriting or something else. You've learned about some of the most influential stories in world history. Go tell good stories of your own. So we're always emphasising there's a wide range of things you can do with religious studies, and I bet that students hear just the same message from their RE teachers at school as well. And maybe what we're missing sometimes is that we need to say, and teaching other people religious literacy and RE and ethics in schools is also a really important task. But what I'd like to see from increased RE is not increased good teaching of RE is not just more and more people doing religious studies at university, but better informed politicians and journalists and police officers and all sectors of society where people have done some RE at school. We should be seeing more understanding of the kind of diverse and complicated society that we live in.
Thanks. And just going back to you, Catherine, about your specific campaign, what can you do about this? You've had a shortfall for the profession has had a shortfall for 9 or 10 years now. Despite your best efforts, nothing seems to be changing. So what are your campaign messages? What are you hoping to achieve?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is it links actually back to what Tim was just saying about that we need religiously literate people across the whole of society. So therefore, RE teaching is a great career because actually you're then feeding, if you like, future generations into careers across the piece, if you like, where this is really important to be able to navigate complex, challenging, difficult situations that we find, because everyone has different perspectives that they're bringing on that, whether it be religious or not. So I think that's one of the first messages, is that, you know, you're actually equipping the young people of the future to go into a whole different range of careers. And I think that another message we're saying is that, I touched on this before, is that this is a really valued subject, actually. You know, the general public really think it's important for young people to be well equipped, to be respectful, to be open, to be well informed, and all of those things. So I think that's the first message. What we're doing is a number of different things. One of them is a social media focused campaign, which is particularly focusing on those messages. So we're using some films, for example, about the importance of the subject. We've got quotes and information for people who are currently teaching the subject about why it's so important and why it's a great career to go into. We have a webinar that we have on offer for those that might be interested in becoming teachers of RE. That's on the 27th of March. That we're delighted that over 60 people have already signed up to come to that. So hopefully our messaging is getting out there that this is a great career. We are also exploring direct messaging to undergraduates as well, so through UCAS, and also looking at targeting kind of university job boards and trying to get into the kind of the career changers market, if you like, particularly through LinkedIn, for example. So there are a range of different strands to the campaign. And I just wanted to point out as well that although Columbia St Gabriel's are supporting this as a charity, a number of other charitable trusts are also supporting this as well, particularly financially.
How political are you going to become, Catherine? Because this is a shortage of RE teachers, but by all accounts, there's a shortage of teachers across the board, including in STEM subjects, which the government is prioritising. So are you joining forces with the unions like the NEU to campaign for higher wages, for example?
So I think we are involved in lobbying, not specifically with the NEU in this instance, but we are raising questions more generally. For example, we ran a webinar the other week in collaboration with the RE Council, for example, where we quite clearly raised questions around challenges around workload. I think in particular, questions around does pay need to be looked at, and so on. And those wider questions around particularly bursary funding, I think, is one of the big things in terms of political campaigning for us. So yes, we are getting involved with the politics. We have had conversations with the department, for example, about this. But I think you're right. There are wider issues, and joining forces with others is really important. In fact, I was at an event this morning where we were looking more widely, particularly around issues around workload and flexible working, for example. And joining forces with others to move the campaign forward more widely.
Thank you. We're joined by Catherine Hughes. By the looks of things, Catherine, you are actually in a classroom at the moment. Thank you for joining. I know you're actually at school, and you're an RE teacher, head of RE in a school in Liverpool. We've been speaking, I know you've just joined us, and thank you, because you've been in the classroom until now. We've been talking about the shortage of RE teachers and the numbers coming through. Can you just tell us from your experience, what's it like teaching RE in your school? How big is your department? Do you have non-specialist teachers? How do you actually handle the timetable in your school?
I'm the head of RE at a Catholic school in St Helens, and I'm also the chair of St Helens Sacra. And I'm quite lucky that I have 10% curriculum time for RE at my school. But I have currently I have 2 non-specialists teaching RE who are full-time RE teachers. And then I have 3 other teachers who are non-specialists who are teaching other subjects and have a couple of RE classes. And then I have 5 staff who are full-time RE teachers with an RE degree and an RE PGCE. Last year, when we were recruiting, we were looking for a maternity cover, and we really struggled to get a teacher. And then when we needed someone else to add to the timetable, we've had to go out like 3 or 4 times to get someone. But even though we're a course subject in a faith school, we've still struggled to recruit specialists, and specialists with responsibility as well, not just to be an RE teacher, but with some responsibility and the opportunity to progress.
Can you tell me the kind of challenges that you have as a head of department if you have so many teachers who are helping you, but where religious education is, well, the study of religion has not been their primary subject of study when they were a student? Do you have to supplement the teaching of the teachers as well as part of your duties? Is that part of what you do?
Yeah, so there's 2 issues really. The first issue is whether they give RE the same time as they give the other subjects that they teach, or whether it's just like, oh, I'll plan it as I go along kind of thing, whether they give it the same time. And I'm very lucky that 2 of the non-specialists are practicing Catholic, so they have that kind of basis to begin with. So my first issue is whether they give it the time that it needs. And the second issue is their subject knowledge. So we have departmental briefings every week of a Wednesday morning, and I'm trying to get those teachers to take it in turns. So come to me once every 3 weeks and then go to the other subjects. We share good practice in our departmental meetings, and we share resources. And it's just that dialogue that they feel comfortable in saying, I have absolutely no idea how to teach the Trinity. Where's my starting point? And some of these concepts are difficult subject specialists anyway.
It's interesting that even in a Catholic school, you have a difficulty or challenge of recruiting. Can I just ask you about diversity? And we've got people with other faiths on the call, and do chip in. But in your school, diverse society around where you are you having enough people with diverse backgrounds coming in to the teaching of RE, or are the people coming in to teach RE predominantly Christian in their tradition?
Well, to be fair, you have to have a preach reference to come to a Catholic school to teach RE. But currently we do have someone who's a Buddhist. And also we try to have like guest speakers come in and specific CPD for staff, faith representatives as well. I've done that this year as well for staff.
What would be your own answer to the challenge of finding sufficient teachers to come in to teach RE? What would you do? What would you say? How do you find them?
I think, obviously, because there's no bursary for training to be teachers. So I think, for RE teachers, that's an issue, isn't it? So they're not even thinking about becoming RE teachers. And I think maybe the perception is you have to be religious, you have to be practicing that faith. But actually, that's not the case. Because I know when I was training, my friend had no belief in God. She thought it was absolutely, there's no evidence. But she thought she was the better RE teacher because she was unbiased and that she could bring it alive better because she didn't have this nagging voice in the back of her head saying, I believe in God, about heaven and things like that. So I think the teachers need a bursary, and maybe the concept that how we view RE, that it's not about whether you believe or not. I am not trying to get my students to get to heaven. I'm just trying to get them to be the Good Samaritan and to kind of explore their own faith in a safe environment. And I suppose maybe people just look at their own RE lessons from a child and think, well, that's how it is. It's just the catechism. It's just, you believe this, do this, you'll go to heaven. And that's not the case at all. So I'd change how we perceive RE, and obviously much more funding as well.
We've got some university people on the call as well here. Not all of them in shop, but Tim is here. What do you think he should be saying to his graduates to get them to train to be an RE teacher?
It's the best subject because it's kind of like you get so much from the students. Like every lesson's different. I've been teaching the same topic for 20 years, but every response is different. And it's a privilege to teach RE, and it's an honour because you're supporting them on their own journey of exploring their own views, exploring their faith, and putting that into action. And I would say it's so much better than people think. It's a great subject to teach. You can teach it in any way. You know, if you want to use a video clip, you can do. If you want to role play, or like I try to be proactive with plasticine and Lego, and the kids love that. And I just think it's much more open-ended than they probably think.
Tim, the challenge.
A few thoughts in response to this. A lot of departments around the country are actually starting to do really interesting projects now to get students into classrooms. I think one of the most important things you can do to encourage someone to consider a career in teaching is to give them that classroom experience of trying out something creative and seeing how excited the students get. And we're seeing departments around the country start to deliver modules in how to teach religion as part of the degree program. But it's not just my students. That's one of the really interesting things about this campaign. Something like 1 in 3, I think, people who go on to be RE teachers have a background in theology and religious studies. But this is also a career choice for people who are doing degrees in a really wide range of subjects like philosophy or history or sociology or the sciences. Really, and I would say any degree that gets you thinking about how people see the world around them, how people live their lives, what matters to them. You definitely don't need, as we've said a few times, to be a practicing Christian or to have Christian experience. And the wider the range of religious experiences, really, the better, which might include atheists and non-religious people and humanists as well. So what we'd like to see, or at least what I'd like to see, is maybe collaborative projects at universities where a TRS department teams up with this. So what we've done is we've teamed up with the philosophy department, and we've got philosophers and religious studies people going into classes together. It would be great to see history and sociology and other departments doing that as well, so that everybody sees how this kind of subject can fit in with the degrees that they're doing at university.
Thank you. Deepak, Nick, you're joining us from the Midlands.
Thank you, my friend. I'm sorry, I'm not a teacher, but I get often requests to go to schools and talk about Hinduism. And the number of requests has increased substantially over the last few years. And it's grown from local schools to now I'm traveling 30 miles, 40 miles sometimes to schools to try and reflect, Hinduism. And actually that's become really stressful in terms of an organization, in terms of a me person. Obviously I got a job and everything else. So I can only say that the request by schools from RE teachers has increased on people like myself from other faiths as well. So there needs to be some kind of recognition and coming together of people, RE teachers as well as ourselves, because I think there's a resource there and there's an opportunity there that could also be maximized as well, really. And I, from my point of view, I do believe that an RE teachers, one of the things about them should be that they have some kind of feeling towards the sacred in whatever shape or form that may take. It is getting into the realm of belief and what it means to have a belief, So maybe a bit more controversial to other contributors, but that's where I feel anyway.
Perhaps that is quite an interesting outcome of the fact that there are fewer specialist teachers, that people within religious communities are being invited into schools to give the information, to give the understanding about the different faiths. I don't know if anyone's come across that. Heather, perhaps. Have you come across that as a feature?
Yeah, I mean, that's always been a common feature of RE, is that it's quite important for RE to to invite faith members in, because we want them to, our young people, to understand the lived notion of faith. And obviously it's much more impactful, it's much more real if they can hear from a member of a faith community or from a particular worldview. So I think having faith members involved in our lessons has a very long and important kind of history. I wonder if it is becoming more important, in a sense, if we have a lot of non-specialist teaching, because there will be an underconfidence in teaching particular traditions. So there may well be more of a need for it. But I would always advocate and always get my trainees to think about how they can use their local sacres, how can they use their local faith communities within their classrooms, because that's what brings RE alive.
Yeah, and to make sure that we pick good faith representatives as well, isn't it? You know, and that we do their faith justice, because we have to make sure we teach it accurately as well, and we don't give any misconceptions and reinforce negative stereotypes.
Jasjit Singh joining us from the University of Leeds.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one, this, because I'm increasingly being asked to come into schools too, and I'm doing quite a number of online assemblies, particularly post-COVID, where that's kind of become normalized. So that's a lot easier for me logistically, of course, because I don't have to actually physically go anywhere. But in terms of this, who do you invite in? That's a really interesting question, because I think the reason people reach out to me is because obviously I'm an academic, and I'm kind of seen to be relatively objective and independent, let's say, as compared to maybe they've possibly had experiences in the past where, you know, individual perspectives have been presented. So this question of, you know, who comes in and represents a minority tradition is really, really important, because if that's the only experience the pupils get with somebody from that tradition, then it needs to be of reasonable quality. Otherwise, you can often do more damage if the wrong kind of thing is said. So that's something I'm actually looking at. I'm starting a project with St. Gabriel's in April, where I'm going to be looking at seeing how local communities can engage with the religion and worldviews community too, and kind of seeing if there's any kind of best practice along how that engagement takes place.
Thank you, Catherine. Do you have a response to that? As you're pioneering that project, will the outcome of this shortage of RE teachers mean that it becomes more important for schools to know how to engage with local religious communities?
Yeah, just to say, it's Jasjit's project. We're funding it, so if you want to know more about the project, do ask him, and we're delighted to be funding and supporting it. I think I think there's a number of things that have sort of been going through my head in the last minute or two as people have spoken about this. I think one of the key things for me is that having well-qualified specialist teachers is almost more important when you're engaging with people from different faith and belief communities, because you need to know where to go, you need to know how to have those conversations, you need to understand something about those communities in order to make sure that what you are wanting people like Deepak, for example, to share in the classroom is what your children and young people need at that particular time in terms of their curriculum progression and understanding, in this case, of the Hindu worldview tradition. So I think having special teachers is even more important. And also, I think, certainly from my experience a very long time ago as a teacher of RE, when you have some knowledge and understanding, you're more willing to go out and engage with faith and belief communities as well. I think, and so therefore you're enriching that whole experience. I think it's kind of both things are required. Both we need, really qualified, good, well-qualified teachers, but also those well-qualified teachers, I think, are more likely, perhaps, to then engage with faith and belief communities and draw in their expertise and their experience into the classroom too.
I think as we wrap up the discussion, I wonder if I could ask you all to give a message to anyone who might be watching this or listening to us. Why should they enlist as a religious education teacher? What is your pitch in 30 seconds? Heather, I'm going to ask you first of all.
Yeah, I would say just because it's a subject. I mean, I was a classroom teacher for 10 years. I now train teachers, and it's a subject that it's just awesome to teach. It has a profound impact on the young people. And, it's not just me saying that, the research says that as well. So why not join us?
Thank you, Catherine.
I'm an RE teacher because this sounds a bit cheesy, but I do actually think it's the best job in the world. It is a privilege to be a teacher, and it's a privilege to be on their journey of faith and help young people get the skills to interact with those people around them in the world and make a positive contribution.
Thank you, Catherine. Right.
Thanks, Ruth. So RE is more popular than ever. I think it's highly valued. I think we've got stats that 250,000 young people did religious studies GCSE last year. I think it's more relevant and important and beneficial for young people than it's ever been. And of course, there's a big shortage. So you highlight to get a job at the end of it. So it's a great career to go into at the current time.
Thank you. And finally, Tim.
Catherine has stolen my punchline, but I was going to say there's vacancies, lots of vacancies. If you are someone who is passionate about religion, or you're interested in a religious or non-religious worldview, you don't need to know everything. No one does. If you're doing a degree in philosophy or TRS or sociology or history or some degree program that's teaching you to understand how people see the world around them, you could be an RE teacher, and there are hundreds of jobs waiting for you to do, which is a nice position to be in, I think.
Thank you. And thank you to all the panel for joining us today. I'm sure you'll keep in touch with us to let us know if your campaign's successful. Look forward to inviting you on another briefing in the future. Thank you again for joining us.